all CEOs, me included, we don't actually know what we're doing.
They're all sharks, so all you got to do, though, is know shark behavior.
I don't think we've ever talked about this before, guys.
We can capture all of the wallet share.
First place you start is with the product.
That's just the first nut.
This is the Capital Stack. Hey everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where I talk to founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation in startups. And today I am talking to a blast from the past, one of my oldest friends, a guy that was in my wedding, James McManus, who is the founder and CEO of Family First. James, how are you?
I'm very well, David. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a great wedding, too. I very much enjoyed myself. The in and out at the end was the coup de grace. It was wonderful.
Yeah, we're still married, too, which is good.
That's pause. That's super pause.
And you ready for this? Did you go to the bathroom before this?
I did.
Okay, so we're good
ready.
there.
I'm ready for the full hour.
So we have like 12 minutes before we have to take a pause. And we're talking about mental health today, and we're talking about your business, Family First, which is an adolescent treatment center for people, mainly in the United States. James, how did you come across looking at this market specifically as it pertains to just adolescents?
So, as you know, I was in a private practice. So I was a psychotherapist, had a master's in psychology, and had my own practice here in Jupiter in Palm Beach Gardens. And my devotion really was towards teenagers. I think coming by it honestly, I had my own struggles as a teenager with mental health and substance use, and so I just had a great deal of empathy and desire to help kids, specifically in their teenage years, kind of navigate some of those life events. So my whole caseload in Jupiter was predominantly teenagers. I was referred these youngsters from family therapists, other centers, things like that, because no one really had the skill set, I think, or the desire to work with adolescents. It's a hard population, extremely labile, and difficult to see results, specifically if you're seeing them 1-2 hours per week on an outpatient basis. So, I knew for operating that private practice for a couple of years that I didn't want to be doing that later down the line in life, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I think I identified that as a market in the state of Florida that was very, very underserved. And so just set forth to put together a small business plan and recruit our first employee here, which is Ben Cecil. I've got he's our co-founder as well. I've got a picture of us with our first check. So as you can tell by the picture, we were pretty immature, still are, and related pretty well to kids. And, we just set forth to start out a small intensive outpatient and went from there.
So you wanted to build a business, which inherently is a lot different than a practice. A practice, if you die, does not work, right? You are inherently the money maker, and you wanted to build something that had some stability, something that's transferable, essentially, that you can provide value to and sell to another person. And you went into the outpatient. Is that just kind of like the natural, ascension of treatment? Like, how did you think about levels of care and why you wanted to use that as kind of your beachhead?
Well, a couple of factors. I lived in a, 1-bedroom apartment and saved about $15,000 to start this. So pretty difficult. I had never owned a home or anything like that. I was just 33 years old. And so financial limitations were a great part of it. But also, there was no competition. There was not one other intensive outpatient for adolescents in Palm Beach County. So, I saw that as a great opportunity to be the first one, and we just kind of took it from there.
Yeah, and like that is a great indicator, but it's also could be a scary indicator. I don't even know if you thought about this, but like, how did you think about like, okay, well, if there's none here, is there really a market here, right, for it? So like, how did you think about, like other comps and other geos? Was it an emerging type of, I guess, a modality of care where you felt like, like it's not really here today, but it's going to be?
It was a lot of naivete, honestly. It was something where I knew I was good at treating youngsters and their families on an individual basis, that I could run great group therapy. And, in the healthcare business, as you know, it's difficult for some people to transition to the marketing piece of it. And I kind of preternaturally had that right off of the bat with the private practice, being able to get out there and to really hustle and market and hit all of the networking groups and all of the meetings. And but also no research really was done. I just saw it as, first, the youngsters that were in my practice could use that service, and I was referring them kind of directly to residential programs. And there were no opportunities to give the kids a chance at a kind of what you would call a higher level of care, the intensive outpatient level. So I was naive, but also, I thought there wasn't anyone that could really do it better than me. And then especially when Ben came and joined, literally I'd never met a better therapist for adolescents than Ben. So we just kind of set off to do it together and just grew it really from that small 1,200 square foot office.
So you took your shot, right? It worked. Was it hard? I mean, I feel like treatment, and it may have evolved, but I feel like treatment was made up primarily of people that have had some sort of, personal experience in recovery or behavioral health issues. They've, overcame them through, some type of work. And, but there was really like a lack of professionalism within the business. Like it was always kind of looked at as like this hodgepodge of individuals that had relationships, and there was no best of class, brand out there. There was no John Hopkins or Mayo Clinic of substance abuse. Has that changed, or do you feel like we're still kind of living in, the former?
Well, I think that with today's youth and what we saw pretty immediately was the real elevation of the mental health component. So that treating underlying depression and anxiety and trauma and family systems issues was really mostly at the root of the substance use problems. So once we started getting our hands on kids in those higher level of cares, the intensive outpatient, and then when we started our first residential, we knew that we had to evolve away from any type of adult model. We did things like, sat down and took the 12 steps of AA and tried to rewrite them for a kid. We did all kinds of attempts and failures at kind of isolating what was going to win the kids' confidence and win the parents' confidence the quickest, and that we could use longitudinally for results. And it really is a consistent evolution. I say in the behavioral health space, it is, the soft science. I mean, there is no thousands and thousands of years ago, we figured out how to set a broken leg, and that's what we did. That's just how it was here's the snap, here's the fix, it's done. You get the results. You listen to the doctor from, even today, like you tear an ACL, here's the fix, listen to these rehab instructions, and 99.9% of the time you're going to be okay. And psychology and mental health is just not like that. It's extremely subjective. So it is a constantly evolving science. And I think we're just scratching the surface. And I always tell our folks and our staff that this is the fun time in something like this. It's so new. In the 1940s, the leading family of the United States, the Kennedys, had their daughter get a lobotomy. That's where the science was. They, put an ice pick into her brain. And that was the most resourceful family that we had in the United States. So, you fast forward 80 years, it's just a blip. It's nothing. So I think that you're right that it really was, I think the industry itself, be it substance use or mental health, still trying to figure some things out to try and end up, hopefully, in my lifetime or the next, to have that kind of math equation that is, you do this, plus you're going to get the result. And I think everyone is striving towards that. But it's hard. It's a moving target.
That's really interesting. I've never really thought about behavioral health being such a early science. And so from your perspective, there is a line of sight to being much more prescriptive and calculated with treatment plans in which you can get results. We're just in such early days. And, from a data perspective, from just, I guess, a mileage perspective, to understand what that is yet.
Accurate, 100%. I think we're just scratching the surface, and the data is being collected, as we speak, by smarter people than myself. But it's ever evolving.
So, do you think? I think about the constructs, because you provide a service, and you obviously have a calculated, approach to how you address things, and that's how you market yourself. And that's, and that's the package, that's the Family First package and the offering that you put out there. But that is constrained by the regulations that are set forth by, accreditation agencies, state boards, et cetera. So is there a regulatory capture element to this where, behavioral health providers and or entrepreneurs, founders like yourself, have a hard time breaking through because these things are so codified and are written and upheld by, people that are, state employees?
Absolutely. And I think, there's the insurance companies dictate a lot of care and treatment. And, rather than fight the uphill battle, you have to play within the constraints and understand the parameters that are set forth by insurance companies, by state regulators, auditors, and different certifications that must be received. I think for any new operator to understand, do not bite off more than you can chew. And I think that's one thing that we did very well. We never got into a position where, if a few things went wrong, it was completely over beyond, the first year or two, where just having, trying to save the capital and trying to make the right decisions for the business. But you don't want to be too dependent on insurance. You don't want to be too dependent on cash pay clients or state reimbursements or Medicaid, things like that. Because as you can see, and as markets shift and things shift in the finance world, they shift in the behavioral health space and in healthcare as well. And one thing that might be good for, United Healthcare today is not good for United Healthcare next month. And Just paying attention to everything, but play within the realm, and things usually work out.
So what you just said was really interesting. The importance of focus and being pragmatic with your revenue mix, diversify it, taking calculated bets, managing risk. That doesn't sound like something founders talk about, right? Founders are visionary people, right? They, strike first and ask questions later. Are those skills and, behavioral kind of like traits? Is that something that you inherently have, or do you have people on your team that help, set up guardrails and help you manage risk? How were you able to kind of have that knowledge?
I think it was kind of put to me pretty well. It was inherent, but it was given the life experience I had prior to opening this. So Andrew Kauth with UBS, who you know very well and work with, gave me a book called The Psychology of Money recently. And I read through and just kind of was like, oh, that's why I did that, because of my experiences. So my first real job, I was doing subprime mortgages with Countrywide Home Loans in LA County in like 2003 and 4 and 5. And so all I saw was this young people with tons of money and, just kind of a fly by the seat of your pants environment and people spending and just, it was a wild time. And luckily I was very young when that, not that young, but 28 when everything crashed and obviously lost my job. But, I had friends in those industries that lost everything. That they had invested in homes. They tried to be pragmatic and smart, put in things to real estate and, just lost everything. So I think that I came with that knowledge of like, I know, for lack of better words, shit can go wrong overnight. And you better be ready to have something stabilize you till you can get yourself on your feet. So, I think that, I had the vision, but I also had that experience of first, I was our only investor, and so it was just all related. It wasn't anybody else's money. So I think there's a different psychology behind that.
Totally. But your balance sheet was not subjected to stupid tax, right? Like where all my companies, they all just, do dumb shit because it's not their money.
Right. And I also had the experience where like overnight I got on a conference call for my job and they were like, oh, we don't have a company anymore. And you're like, what are you talking about? I didn't know that could happen, and it certainly did. So life experience helped as well.
So, you came out, you professionalized a brand, you went to market, you've opened up an East Coast offering that no one else had. In order to have a successful business, you need to have a successful sales motion, right? And in a business where, it really is all referral dependent, right? It's not a recurring revenue business. You have to create these relationships. How did you really, I would say, quantify a budget? Like, how did you think about, growing the business and keeping up and making sure that, it was all done cleanly? Well, not just like, because I could just imagine you sending people out in the market and, like, oh, we had a really great call, but like, really they're just getting smile fucked and no business comes from it. Right. So how did you think about, setting expectations and, really forecasting your growth?
Well, I think that, and again, luckily, I had Ben. So we sat down, the company got in it was a little hairy for us about 9 months in, and we had a business development person who had been in the field and yada, yada. And I just said, here's what we're going to do. And I met Ben at Starbucks and said, you are going to take care of every single thing operationally. And starting like Monday, I'm getting on the road and I need to sell this. So my suggestion to anyone who has that, and I've got that kind of ability to, I think that that's where I shine most, not operationally. I don't have a great deal of patience to teach people. And so my good fortune was that Ben did. and he could stay here and he could make sure, treatment was going fine. The therapists were, in line, all of these things were going, and I could get on the road. So it was just me for 5 years. I did all of the admissions calls and all of the outreach. And so we saved a great deal of money for those positions. And, it was 7 days a week, 365. I mean, it was a nonstop, movement to save as much money as possible to get to the point where we could safely hire a business development team, hire an admissions team, and really start to solidify the company as a little bit more than just a real mom and pop operation.
And so what was that like? I mean, you went from founder-led sales to, I would say, founder-managed sales. So, I mean, I could imagine that being pretty frustrating. You're going in, you're like, well, I brought in X amount of patients. Why can't you? Right?
And again, I just got lucky. I mean, I had several people. I was desperate to find someone to take me away from that role. It's extremely laborious. It was there was a lot, and that's the way I think. Honestly, it kind of should be. There was a lot on my shoulders for the first 5 years, and I think honestly, as I thought about our speaking today, and what I would say to people is, no one's going to come and save you. There's no one out there that's going to come and magically be able to, increase your bottom line. You have to go and do that. If that's your skill set, you must do that. And, I hired and fired. I got a little bit of a reputation of being kind of a quick draw. I could kind of figure it out in 2 or 3 months and be like, nope, not good. And so had a little bit of a reputation for, letting people go pretty quickly just because it wasn't going to work. And we got an amazing gentleman out of Orlando who I consider honestly the best in the country at this position. I mean, he currently has 30 kids in care right now. And Graham was a real savior for us there for my ability, because I needed to come off of the road to figure out what the next steps for Family First were. Because you can't do it if you're just out there all the time in hotels, on the plane, in the car. And it's tough to think about what are the next steps for your company. So again, I got very lucky with that. And I will say, not necessarily lucky. I was out there a lot and hunting. Someone mentioned his name to me, which business is business, right? So they said, I've got this monster in Orlando just crushing it. And I filed that away. I set up a lunch and learn with his company and our company in Orlando with our clinical director. Went up there. I didn't care about that event at all. The whole point of that was to target him. And I went up there and I met him and I kind of just pulled it in. And then he came on. And so it was lucky that he was there and available at that time. But I will say, if you're not out there at all these conferences, meeting all these people, you're never going to hear about these, diamonds in the rough that are just sitting there waiting for you.
It's funny you mentioned, luck, and I heard this old quote, which is pretty good. It's it's funny how it works that the harder that I work, the luckier that I get.
I like that. I like that. Yes.
Luck is really, I'd say the harder that I work, the more opportunities get availed to me. Right. And those opportunities are availed by luck, but there's no opportunities if you're not actually turning the crank.
Correct. You got to get out there with a fervor. There was no detailed plans. I just would call people in different cities and they would introduce me to other people, and I would stay there for 2 or 3 days and come home, land, get another plan and go. Mm-hmm. You just have to, it's a grind, but it is extremely satisfying on the back end of it, because you remember those 4 or 5 a.m. flights. You remember sitting on tarmacs or renting these stupid little cars. And I got caught in like a flash flood in Houston. Like, you remember all of these times where shit was low, and when it booms, it's a very rewarding feeling. Know that you grinded that out and earned that, and but I like what you said. I think that the harder you work, the luckier you're going to get.
So you recently had a recap. You had somebody come in and invest in the company. And so what does that mean for you? What does that mean for Family First? Why'd you do
yes, very exciting. I wanted us to cut the largest swath we could. And I think, you and I had that conversation where founders have to be honest with each other or to themselves about their limitations and about the company's limitations. And, we hit a point where, we tried something new and I thought we could just kind of go it alone and plug along, and it didn't go very well. It just didn't go well. And I was just racking my brain on what did I do wrong? What did we do wrong? What can we do differently? And then just a light bulb went off. It was just like, we can't go any higher without more capital and, a little bit more experience, how to take a company, a smaller cap, mid cap company, to smaller cap, really.
Well, that's a problem with non-tech companies, is that the scale is really difficult, right? And it's if you can't, you need to hire people that kind of outshoot your EBITDA, right, in order to get to that next level. And you have to do inorganic, right? You have to buy shit because you can't maintain the growth rate.
Correct. You're absolutely right. We couldn't do it, 10 bed house at a time. It was going to take us 10 years to get where we wanted to go. So, our goal really was to be the platform, the sole focus of a PE firm, and have, a new management team join us that has experience with larger entities. And so we got that. It was a painful process. I would never lie to anyone, and it's very painful. And I'll say it's done when it's done. Don't let anybody ever say it's this amount of time or whatever. It's done when it's done. So
the process of closing the deal.
Correct. Yes, that is. It's a rigorous.
Did you engage in it?
Sport.
Yeah. Did you engage an investment banker?
I did, yes. Thankfully to you, you gave me some years ago when we thought about recapping Perkins Coie, you recommended, and Elliot Kaplan and Andrew Kettle were our lawyers, and they referred us to several investment banks, interviewed probably 6, and landed on Hexagon Capital Alliance out of Orange County, who deals with 10, 20, 30, 40 EBITDA companies. So right in our wheelhouse. And they did a great job for us. And, we were able to complete that about a month ago.
God, thank God you didn't take that first recap.
Oh, that was awful. Wasn't that terrible?
That was a terrible experience. That was terrible for me, and I wasn't even involved.
So bad. It was such a bad deal.
I know.
That was where God looked out and the universe or what have you. And the lawyers that you referred me to that kept saying, don't do this. Mm-hmm. And I was just pushing it forward.
You tasted the money, right? Like you tasted the money, and it's hard to, they call that when the deal gets pregnant. It's hard to kind of back away from that. And it takes a lot to drop it once you're mid-process.
Yeah, we were right there, had the docs, had everything. And I remember being at lunch with my wife. We'd just had our son, and I was like, fuck, man, this is a shitty deal. I was pumping it up for months and months. This is going to be it.
Yeah, you're throwing dirt on it. You're like, well, what about this? It could be a nightmare.
And it was a bad deal. But I will say again, through your contacts and through Perkins, they really helped me a great deal through that. And then through this as well. So,
if I was to give you advertising space, not even advertising space, if I was to give you a billboard where it would be at the intersection of entrepreneur, founder, central, what was the one thing that you would want to be amplified? What message to early stage operators?
I would say you have to be able to do every job in your company and understand every job in your company. For me, I was an overnight tech. I was a clinical director. I was a group therapist, program director. I had done everything. And so I knew every one of those positions, and I could step into whatever happened. I could step into any position in that beginning time and do that job, so that there was no, if this person leaves, we are in trouble. And we're still that way. I think that Ben and I still have that thought where we can do anything. There is no one person greater than the sum of the family first parts. We can step into any role necessary. So that's what I would say, is be comfortable doing every role.
Right. And then that also ensures you don't get snowed, right? Like from a resource perspective, like, oh, we need X amount of people to do this. We're like, oh, not really. I've done your job. And, you don't. Right. And then what's the book that you've gifted the most to people?
It's actually, this book by Ken Follett called Shogun. It's no book and I read and now, because I've got the bad back, the chiropractor said I can't read in bed, so I listen to audiobooks, but I just read for pleasure and to escape. And a book like Shogun is just it's amazing to think about. It's basically the West India Trading Company. This Belgium sailor who was hired by Belgium through England. This is 1200, and got pushed around South America and ended up in Japan to be the first white person Japan had ever seen. And I just think to those like kind of epic tales, and I just referred it actually to a gentleman we sat with the other day, and he loved it. I mean, the hardships that the human being faced, I don't know, it brings, some solace to our extremely pampered lives. And, but how brilliant some of these people were, and how hard life was for a long, long time. And our life's not so bad. So put things in perspective.
It's actually unbelievable. Like, I was listening to a podcast this morning with Mark Andreessen, and, he was saying that the amount of information and the amount of resources that everybody, not just rich people, but everybody has, right, is so astronomical. Like, he was thinking about writing a blog post called, like, where are all these super productive people? Like, we have the tools, right? We have the mode to get them. Our output should be 20x of what it is. So what's the deal?
Yeah, I couldn't answer that question. I think people bump up against hardship and just stop. And
I think people are distracted.
People are definitely distracted.
I think people just are really distracted and bullshit that doesn't matter.
I agree.
Yeah, we're getting really esoteric here.
We are. That's good.
I like this.
That's how
James,
we roll.
Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a lot
Absolutely,
of fun.
David. I appreciate you having me on.
I am really excited to see what Family First does in the professionalization of adolescent treatment, right? And like, let's get some real evidence-based, outcomes. I mean, I guess you could say that there's a lot of areas within healthcare that, don't have a lot of great processes, but behavioral health probably being the least amount, right? And I'm glad that you are pioneering the way to get that done.
I appreciate the kind words and the opportunity to come on your podcast. Thank you.
All right. Everybody, thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, tell a friend, cancel me, do whatever you'd like to do. Whatever you feel you must do, I am encouraging you to do it. Just do it. Just do something. Stop looking at your fucking phone. And with that, we drop an episode every Tuesday, and we will see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.